Imagine if, for the next week, you had to use a cell phone that came out in 2005. The Nokia 1110 was the best-selling phone of that year. For starters, you'd be lucky to even get service on a device this old. 15 years might not feel too long ago, but we all know that in computer years, that's several generations. And cell phones, cameras, video game consoles, streaming devices, tablets, everything we use utilizes computer chips, which get faster and smaller every single year. So the same thing happens to our devices. But there's at least one industry where using computer technology that's 15 or even 20 years old is not only totally acceptable, but that technology still retails at full price. Welcome to the world of electronic music. Today, I'd like to tell you the tale of the best-selling electronic instrument of all time, one which was literally outdated before it even hit store shelves. The synthesizer was a staple of 1980s culture. The warm tones of electronic sound signals took over pop music for over a decade, setting the tone for an entire generation of upbeat music that was absolutely filled with synthesizers. Now, trends within pop music will come and go, but after synthesizers hit the scene, they never actually died off. They're now considered a standard instrument in any music recording studio. What the synthesizer offers is simply too valuable to be restricted by any particular genre.
Plugged in, turned on, and creating musical magic from thin air and solid-state electronics.
Unlike digital keyboards such as this one, which merely play a pre-recorded sound effect when triggered, the synthesizer allows users to create their own sounds by starting with a simple audio waveform and shaping that sound by hand, using buttons, knobs, and of course patch cables.
What are they? Oh, these are patch cords. These are the things that route the signal from one little module to another to get the sound. You can patch it in a lot of different ways. And the way you patch it will determine what you get. It's like creating an instrument.
For all intents and purposes, synthesizers were the beginning of mainstream electronic music. The sounds people were creating with synthesizers had never been heard before, and the devices themselves were getting more advanced with each passing year.
Let me ask you, are all of these sounds pre-recorded or made right there?
In the 1970s, before computer chips were widely available, synthesizers simply made their sounds using a small, buzzing electronic component called an oscillator. These are analog synthesizers. By the 1980s, when synthesizers really went mainstream, a very important split was occurring. Computer chips were becoming both small enough and cheap enough that companies like Casio, Roland, Korg, and Yamaha quickly began introducing digital synthesizers into their lineups.
So you want to be a rock star? Well, then get your hands on a Casio CZ101 digital synthesizer with its multi-temporal MIDI capabilities and dual line of Casio PD sound generators. This isn't just a synthesizer. Oh no, it's a rocker launcher.
With no oscillator to be found, these keyboards create their sounds digitally using a computer chip and algorithms. These synthesizers were cheaper, easier to produce, and with a computer chip and memory built in, they could even replicate sounds that would be impossible to create with an analog synthesizer.
Snare, rim shot, bass, cymbals, bongos. Casio has it all.
By the turn of the millennium, synthesizers had permeated into every genre of music, everything from psychedelic rock to rap and hip-hop, even jazz and fusion. Cue the release of Korg's MS-2000. The MS-2000 was designed to bring some of those older analog sounds into a modern digital synth. Truth be told, there's nothing too special about this particular keyboard. It was met with moderate reception upon its release, and just like other synthesizers made with computer chips, it was obsolete within just a few years of coming out. That's what makes Korg's next decision all the more confusing from a surface level. In an age of rapidly evolving technology, Korg decides to reuse the sound engine of their MS-2000, But now, with smaller hardware available, they could fit it into a much smaller cabinet. And that's exactly what they did. In 2002, Korg would unveil their tiny 37-key entry-level synthesizer that would take the world by storm. This is a MicroKorg. One look at the MicroKorg says it all. What Korg is really selling here is the feeling of owning a synthesizer. Every single aspect of the MicroKorg's design is intended to look retro, but it goes even further than that. They specifically designed this device to look like what the average person thinks of when they hear the word synthesizer. Fake wood grain on the side panels, knobs that look like they came straight off of the famous Mini Moog, even a red 7-segment display, just like that seen on the Prophet 5. Quite simply, what Korg was intending to create was a low-cost, clean, beginner-friendly device that makes you feel like you own an old 1980s analog synthesizer. It's the same marketing that Crosley has been using for years with their vintage-looking vinyl record players. But everyone knows that buyers are attracted to cheap gimmicks. That's nothing new in the world of marketing. The difference here is that the MicroKorg isn't just an aesthetic facade. It has the full power of the MS-2000 crammed inside it. Sales skyrocketed, and the low price tag helped the MicroKorg become a cliché beginner's synthesizer. It was only a matter of time before someone would come along and expose the full power hiding inside. Composer and producer Dorian Concept puts himself down in history as one of the very first internet bedroom producers after he uploaded a series of YouTube videos in late 2006 titled Fooling Around on the MicroKorg. The focus here isn't his keyboard skills, but rather how Thompson utilizes the effect matrix in real time to bend and shift the sound while he plays. Unlike the synthesizers of yesteryear, which rely on a messy array of patch cables, or even the MicroKorg's big brother, which opted instead for a sophisticated array of buttons, the MicroKorg goes for a design that you could almost call minimalist, with just 7 knobs responsible for scrolling through and editing over 30 different parameters. For a device designed to create and edit sounds, this was another bold move. The clean design makes the device less intimidating and more approachable to beginners, but sacrifices ease of editing. But the question of how usable is it was steadfast answered by Dorian Concept. This wasn't an ad for the MicroKorg, but at the time it may as well have been, with countless users attributing their purchase to that original viral video. From there, the device quickly began making appearances both on stage and on screen, with some fairly mainstream bands and artists of the time, such as LCD Soundsystem, The Killers, and Tame Impala, just to name a few. At this point, the MicroKorg was poking its head into every level of music production, from the hobbyist to the professional. With over 100,000 units sold and sitting in studios around the world by 2008, the MicroKorg became an instant classic. The very next year, Dorian Concept, now an established artist, would take his MicroKorg on stage alongside Flying Lotus, one of hip-hop's most respected producers. It became clear that, small as it is, the MicroKorg is not just a toy. For the market, it's a perfect balance. It has the aesthetic gimmicks that we expect from a product that's designed for the mass consumer market, but with enough actual power and technical capability that advanced users can enjoy diving into the device. And it's advanced users like Dorian Concept that have catapulted the MicroKorg and its sounds into permanent fame. These days, there's thousands of custom-made sounds for the MicroKorg available online, and it's a community that has only gotten larger as time goes on. Daniel Kastner, a YouTuber with a modest following, uploads primarily MicroKorg tutorials, and even goes out of his way to use some of the advanced features of the MicroKorg in ways that most people have never even thought of. The MicroKorg is far from the best-sounding or most feature-packed synthesizer, but for the price, it's fun to explore whether you're a novice or an expert. That's why as of 2020, the MicroKorg is the best-selling electronic instrument ever produced.
on the very best synth worldwide selling of all time.
How long has the MicroKorg been available, the original one? I remember selling it years ago.
14 years, I think.
14
So it's been
years.
around a long time, yeah.
And that record likely isn't going anywhere. Every single year that Korg has re-released the MicroKorg, it has been the best-selling synthesizer of that year, with the most recent run being the 2017 Platinum Edition, celebrating the device's 15-year anniversary. The MicroKorg was a recipe for success, and despite having an internal sound engine that's 2 decades old, that success continues onward. Thank you so much for watching.